Welcome to the Palo Santo and Thoughts podcast. As I light the Palo Santo, let us reset the space, allowing new energy and new thoughts to enter. What was does not automatically become what is, and even if it does, it does not mean it always will. Let us release what we must to receive what we must. It is mine. It is yours. What is for us will always be Ashe.
Welcome back. I'm Carter, and this is the Palo Santo and Thoughts podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of the homies, Aaliyah. I've had a chance to get to know Aaliyah for about a year and some change. A corporate creative, town biz, Oakland, Sacramento, just like native. So I'm really excited to just have a chance to just talk about love with you today. Awesome. I know that when a while back we were hanging out and we were just talking about the podcast ideas, and you also shared that you're a fan about All About Love, and so I'm just really thankful to be able to actualize this and have you join the episode. I want to just create space for us. There anything you want to say to the homies?
I'm excited to be here. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Hey, that's what's up. Hell yeah. So, as you said, let's get into it. So before we do that, I always love to just have a moment to do a grace check-in, but then also some intention setting. All right. And so I'll start off with the intention setting first. So when you think of just being in this space, what's one intention that you want to put forward for this space?
An intention that comes to mind is just to be open.
Yeah.
Just to be open and be able to receive and feel comfortable, which I do, to just, speak about such a vulnerable topic like love.
Yeah. I love that. For me, the intention that is coming up is, I would say just being present and sitting in the space, wherever it goes.
All right.
So I'm excited for that. And I really appreciate just us having a chance to set intention, because I think that now we've set the intention and now we get to create it. We get to lean into it.
Absolutely. And being present, that's literally an intention for my overall life now. So amazing.
Hey, all right. So now we set the intention. Let's talk about grace. So really, it's just when I think about grace, I think about kindness towards self, or just kindness towards self.
Yeah.
When you think about grace, how have you been showing grace to yourself recently?
Oh, it's really been about still, making my lists. Full intention to, get everything done, but it being okay that something doesn't get done. Or it's really about prioritization for me, and just really being honest about just the weight that things hold and what I could get to, you know what I mean? And when you're not able to get to everything on there, showing yourself grace, just being easy on yourself, because stuff really, when you write that list out, everything does not have to get done today. You know what I mean? And so in the nature of what I do and just how I am as a person, really taking it easy on myself when certain things don't get done. And it's totally fine. You could have a vision for a day, and then some of the things that you had envision yourself doing, you don't get to. And I think in the past, it's just been stress. And there's no need for that. You know what I mean? A lot of those things are not even as important as you thought they were at the beginning of the day, by the time you get to the end. So that's how I've been showing myself grace.
I love that.
How about you?
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that, because I feel lists, they're definitely helpful for me. And also, like you said, right, it's it's okay if everything doesn't get checked off, right? Because there's tomorrow, there's the next day, you know what I mean? So yeah, I really love that. For me, I would just say like just resting. You know, like I spoke about it a little bit earlier, but this week I've just been moving around so much, and there's been um, just a lot of active energy that has been like asked of me in the week in a way that I'm like, okay. By the end of the day, I'm like, all right, if you don't want to do anything, you know, like it's okay, and just like honoring my body where it's like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do this. And I do, and like transparently, I think I could definitely do a better job of that too, right? Where it's like just resting more because I'm like,
Yes,
you know, I be trying to do too much. I be outside a little bit, just a little bit, and but also find that balance of like excited to just chill, excited to like relax and just like stay in. So that is how I've been showing grace to myself, but also how I want to continue to show more grace to myself because I do think that like, and particularly this week, well, this past week, I think I could have like showed a little bit more grace to myself transparently, you know. So yeah, that is how I've been showing grace to myself.
Nice.
Yeah,
and it's a learning like practice to
it
be honest.
is. Yeah, it is, especially because I feel like when there's like similar to what you said, right? We were talking about just like a lot of the commitments that we have and the things that we want to do, and it's like you want to do everything, and it's just like the reminder of like, okay, you can't do everything, you know. And also, if you do 90% of those things, make sure you get some time to rest. Make sure you get some time to celebrate. Make sure you get some time to like do something for you to like celebrate the fact that you've done those things.
100%.
Cause like it's like, all right, yeah, you might have pushed through those things, but also it's like take some time to be like, I did that shit.
Yeah.
You know? So like I want to take this moment to be like, we did that shit, okay? Cause like there were different things on the list that, you know, that we were able to do, that we weren't able to do. But at the end of the day, we did what we did, and like we did it to the best of our abilities, and like that is worth celebrating. So shout out to us.
Absolutely, that's very much so a part of being present as well. Like acknowledging in the moment what you were able to accomplish, how far you've come, like all those things need to be celebrated and acknowledged. And it's not always about what you haven't done yet or what didn't get done. Definitely that perspective shift. I think that is definitely a display of love for yourself, love and grace.
Absolutely. Which I think is a perfect segue into the next part of our conversation, which is, you know, we are about to get into talking about love. Okay. But before we do it, I got a little jingle.
Okay.
So feel free to join in, you know, if you want to.
Okay.
But we always have to light the Palo Santo stick before we start our conversation. Okay. Before we get into these thoughts, you know. And so I got the Palo Santo stick right here, you know. And so the jingle is the Palo Santo stick is lit. 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 It's litty.
I'm weak.
Yeah. And so the reason why I always love to light the Palo Santo stick before the conversation is just like an opportunity to reset the space and just like bring in the vibes because we are co-creating the space together, you know? And so like we get to, it's like an acknowledgement of like whatever has existed before, we get to create something new together. And this Palo Santo stick is like the resetter, you know? So yeah. All right. Well, now that the Palo Santo stick is lit, put that thing right here.
Smell it.
Right? You know what I mean?
It's clarifying.
It's the vibes. I want to, you know, to start with our first question.
Okay.
And so, excuse me. In the book, All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks, this lovely book right here. Bell Hooks talks about the graffiti work that she would pass by and how it served as an inspiration. And the graffiti read, the search for love must continue even in the face of great odds." And I love to start each episode with asking all of my guests, all of my homies, like, why do you believe the search for love must continue even in the face of great odds? Take some time to think about that.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's hard to come up with a solid answer with that because it just has to. First of all, like I do feel that this is correct. Like I think as a millennial Black woman, it's like I work to not become jaded, and that is very much so towards platonic and otherwise types of love, just to keep myself open because of this very sentiment, because I definitely believe in it. But in terms of why, I think that love feeds you in a way that so many other emotions don't, and it fills you up. And I think community is so important. So very much so heavy on the platonic love and the family, familiar, or that type of love as well. I think that it must continue because it feeds your soul in a way nothing else does. That's what I'm gonna say.
I love that.
That's how I feel. It's a feeling and an experience that allows you to be seen wholly and fully. And that's the you, that's the shadow you, parts of you that you don't, you'd rather others not see or you don't love that much. But it is something really amazing when you are seen truly. And so that's why we have to continue to pursue and hunt it down for sure and give, because I feel like the more love you give, it's so cause and effect for sure.
I love that. And you mentioned a term that I've been hearing more, and so I would love if there was for the homies who might not be aware of it, could you share more about the shadow version of yourself, the shadow you?
Oh yeah. It's in my mind, because I might not be right, but it seems like those parts of you that you might not be, super excited about, or you may shun or even feel shame about those sides of yourself. And I think in the past, I might have been a little on the toxic positivity side because I love being an optimist, and I feel like I am, and I can still claim that. But the way that it becomes toxic is that you're not acknowledging those other feelings. So if something happens that you don't like, it's okay to not like it. It's okay for a bit of jealousy to come up. It's okay to be a little petty. It's fine. Sometimes life requires it. Sometimes the situation requires it. I'm not the one to sit in those feelings. And so that's why I do love having that, that label of an optimist. But it's okay to experience those feelings, to acknowledge those feelings is really important. And all of that, I feel like, would be kind of my shadow self. And it's just a way to coexist with that side of you. And I think in the past, I tried to act like it didn't exist, or those feelings would come up and I would feel shame towards them because good girls don't feel that way, or they don't react in a certain way. But then you're totally leaving behind a part of yourself, truly. And it's those parts, along with, the celebrated parts as well, that make you who you are. And I think it's really important to have those because it could spiral in another direction that I also experienced, just being transparent, of like now I'm irritated or secretly jealous of others who are able to express themselves fully.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm jealous of someone who gets to throw a tantrum. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And even in those feelings, I really had to take a second and be like, why do I really feel that way? And I just realized I wasn't allowing myself to fully be myself
Exactly.
and to feel those
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah.
And so you're giving grace to all those sides of yourself. And so that shadow side, I feel like it is almost as important as those other like lit, light,
Yeah.
lighter sides of yourself.
Yeah. And because like whenever I've heard about like the shadow version, it's like the shadow work. People are like, you got to make sure you're doing the shadow work. You got to make, and it's like giving yourself permission to acknowledge those aspects of yourself where it's
So
like,
that is shadow work.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I'm like, you doing the shadow work, all right? You are doing the work because you're
No, for
acknowledging, you know
real.
what I mean? Acknowledging and just
Wow,
like
I didn't even
exploring
know.
that, you know? So
Yeah.
shout out to you for that because I feel like it is something that, you know, granted, like people are talking about it, but also at the same time, it's like, it can be easy to forget that it's like there's
Yeah.
these aspects of us because it can be like subconscious things, you know, where it's like
For sure.
and then you're like, oh, and then but it's like, wait a minute, I'm noticing this, and like, let me be intentional about exploring this because this is having an impact. But like by doing it right, like what you said earlier, it allows for us to be able to fully show up, to fully acknowledge who we are,
Yes.
and to in moments where it's like, okay, I need to check in about that. I need to address that. I need to explore where this is coming from, but also it's like, I need to embrace this. I need to shine this. I need to be seen and fully supported because, like you said, right, it's like the beauty about love is being able to be in spaces where people see us for who we
Yeah.
are fully and not feel like we have to hide aspects of ourselves. It's like, no, like, this is all of me, all right? So, like, there's good parts, there's the other parts, and there's the other parts, you know? But, like, I ain't gonna say bad, I'm gonna say there's other parts, you know what I mean? But and that's totally fine because
It
we're
is.
humans, you know? I feel like that's, you know, something I think about is, like, the importance of, like, authenticity. And something for me that a while back I had to, like, make a very intentional decision about, and it's, like, to not really seek being perfect or seek perfectionism, but really focusing on like authenticity. Because I don't know, I just feel like it could be really easy to just be like, oh, I can't let no one see that I'm like flawed in this way. It's like, no, here it is, you know, and like you get to choose how you want to engage while also me acknowledging like there's still work that I want to do to like address those things that like, you know, I need to get some work. You know, I need to tend to it. You know, and I need to pour into that. So, thank you so much for just like sharing more about that shadow work because I think it is like it's something that we all should, you know, we all should lean into or explore, and if we haven't already,
Yeah.
you know.
And thank you for creating the space.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Yeah, but I agree. Love is what is life without love? You know, like,
Sounds so sad.
and the thing is that um, there are people who are living without love, and you know, for different reasons, right? Like you mentioned, like it's easy to be jaded because of like the experiences of like, you know, the people who, you know, they're because of their relationship to us, they're like they're supposed to love us, they're supposed to do this, and like we may not receive love from them, and so it's like if I haven't received love from these people, who gonna love me? If this person, these people, supposed to love me,
Right.
how can I expect someone else to do it if I haven't received it from them? You know, and so being able to be hopeful to love and like the and to in the midst of all of that, we deserve it. I think you actually captured it accurately, and I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm like,
Oh, thank you.
no, I was like, I was like, yeah, I think what you said is right on, and that feels true for me as well. Um, so I wanted to like ask you another question, which is Bell Hooks talks about women being love practitioners.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, as a love practitioner, what is one lesson that you would invite others to learn about love?
Yeah. First, I really want to just say that as a woman, it's okay if you're not that love practitioner.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that
Mm-hmm.
so naturally, most of us, some of us are very nurturing. And even in those spaces, take on way too much.
Yeah.
But if that is not something that comes natural to you
Mm-hmm.
as, a woman,
Yeah.
if that is, how you label yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And everyone's journey is different. Personally, for myself, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I feel like a very natural kind of nurturing spirit. I'm a eldest daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different factors that like contributed to me feeling that way. And I'm such a lover girl at heart, seriously. But in terms of a lesson, it's that love starts with me. Like I have to pour into myself. I have to exercise self-love for me to continue to be that lover girl, for me to pour into others, for me to pour into my job. I think that self-love and self-care, those things come first. And so like you were saying about, this person who may be, people who they thought were supposed to love them don't. And it's like, who's going to love me then? It's you, baby. Like it has to be you. And that's where it starts. And like I said, it's so like a cause and effect thing that next thing you know, others are pouring love into you as well. But that is a lesson. And just earlier we were talking about just our relationships with our jobs and things like that. And a company is a company.
Yeah.
They're not here to pour love into you.
No.
It might feel like it because they're, might be pouring a little something into your bank account.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, sometimes that recognition might feel like love, but truly you are the one looking out for you.
Yeah.
And especially in those type of settings. And I've learned that the hard way as well. And so I've had one thing, it is to practice self-love and self-care in a way that feels natural and authentic to you. It is not all about getting a mani-pedi and a massage.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is rest. Sometimes it's boundaries. Sometimes it's what I'm experiencing right now is it's discipline. Like self-love is so heavy in the discipline. Like who do I see future, lay as? It starts with discipline right now. And right now it's such a direct reflection to how much I love myself. How am I going to show up now? I mean, maybe that comes, when you are in your 30s and we are thinking more so about health and legacy and things like that. So that's my lesson.
I love
it's
that.
Like, it starts with you.
I love that. I love that. So self-love, one of the things I was curious about, because, there might be some people's like, where do you even start with that? Where do you start with self-love? So for you, how did the journey of self-love start for you? How were you introduced into self-love or about self-love?
Oh, wow. That is such a question. I'm like, when did that kind of happen?
Yeah.
Maybe it happened when the whole kind of like corporate situation happened. Me working for this company, long story short, we were all laid off. And it was really just like, oh wow, nobody's looking out for me. Like I have to have my own back. You know what I mean? Like And funny enough, that was right when the pandemic was starting as well. So this is top of 2020. So like we spiraled before the rest of the world kind of spiraled because they actually had us in limbo for a little bit too before they laid us all off. So I think in that time, it was just so F you to this company that it was like forcing me to focus in on myself and what I wanted next or what could even be possible next. And so within that time, the next like 2 years really, I was working part-time and then also started to freelance as things opened up. And so it was so much more about managing my time and like what I wanted to get out of these experiences. And I think in that, because I'm able to kind of create the life that I wanted at that time and explore different, you know, creative avenues and things like that, it just really opened up, you know, me being able to pour into myself. I wasn't really on somebody else's schedule, you know, outside of obviously like my time at work and stuff like that. And so I think within that space and really having to take care of yourself mentally during the pandemic, that was like a really big thing. It was super easy time to spiral, you know what I mean? And so it was just like, what are the things that could help me not do that? So like I picked up this like photography project that I created in my mind and like throughout that summer, and picked up other hobbies and was like running and other things just to see kind of what worked for me. And I think from that whole experience of 2020 is like came out this like kind of self-love practice and me knowing what things work for me. And so to that person who might not know, you know, how you start, you just try things. And like a big kind of theme for me too is like, what would make 12-year-old Aaliyah happy? Like that's such a big thing for me right now. And it's like, I love painting my nails. And I love, you know, I don't know, maybe it's an ice cream, maybe it's a, you know, another creative project or something fun or a hike or something like that. But it's just like, what would make her happy? Down to like what I'm wearing, what I'm watching, you know?
It's like what I'm hearing is being able to create joy for that inner child. You know, which is like so.
For sure.
I love that. I love that because you know, joy and play, especially as we get older, it could be so. I think for me, right, like it's like I think that's why I be outside so much. Actually. Because I'm like, I want some joy and play, right? Like, I feel like life can demand so much seriousness out, and I'm like, I want to be able to be like, let's go out, let's have fun, let's go connect, let's check out, let's dance, you know, like, and that's where I get my joy, you know, because I'm like, during the weekday, I'm like, all right, you got to be on it, but, and so I really appreciate you bringing in like that aspect of like, also doing things for that inner child, you know.
That's so important.
Because as we get older, you know, it can be easy to just like, to be like, oh, I have to prioritize what it means to be an adult and forget that. But it's like, they're always there. They're with us forever, you know? And so like being able to honor and listen to that person is so important. So I'm like so glad to hear that through the self-love, self-care journey that you've also been able to honor that 12-year version of like, you know, who you are and what you want to be. So shout out to you.
She deserves it. And then also something else that's like coming up for me is like a lot of us didn't have that example. So both of my parents very much so present in my life, but I grew up in a single parent household, and I didn't see my mother like exercise self-care that much. There was a moment where she was, you know, working out at the gym and things like that. But just in terms of like day to day and, you know, how she poured into herself. And even she didn't have a huge example of that either. So a lot of us are, you know, starting from scratch and just seeing what works for us, and that's totally fine. But just know you deserve it. Your child self deserves it. So.
You saying that actually is just like, Such a big thing because I had a chance to talk to my parents on the podcast.
Oh,
And something that my mom shared and my dad actually, they both shared was like self-love is so new to them.
nice.
They're like, what is this thing? Like what? And so
Oh,
like you
poor
said, like I'm
baby.
like, I would see them exercise and like, but I'm like, yeah, it's because for them a part of like being a parent meant to like sacrifice
Yeah,
themselves to like make sure we were good. And so because of that, it's
sure.
like they couldn't actually probably do no self love because it was
Yeah.
like they were so focused on like what it meant to just love their children and show up and support and prioritize us. So it's like, and I think that for me is even when I think about like the future, I'm just like I I wanted to make sure I have some time to like be a little selfish,
Yeah.
because I feel like I don't know if my parents had that opportunity to do that, and I'm happy that now they have that chance to do that. And also at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I'm like, I want to do it now. I want to do it now so I can know what it means,
Right.
and so that even at some point, if and when I have children, like that, I can say like, I know what this looks like. I know how to return back to it,
Yeah.
even if I have to be selfless more because of my partner or my children.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to say I know how to do this, and this is not
Mm-hmm.
something that's unfamiliar to me. So whenever I can, must return back to it, even in the midst of those different relationships or those responsibilities that I hold, um, it's just familiar,
Mm-hmm.
So like like that's what something that was as you were saying, I was like, yeah, like that is one of the reasons why I feel very intentional about like I want to travel, I want to do all these different things because I'm like I know whenever it's time for me to um, whenever I want to like become a father or become a husband, it's that like I'm gonna have to really think about a lot of other people, and I think it's important to have moments where you just think about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No, definitely. It's a privilege
yeah,
for sure.
it's a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a
My
privilege.
parents had me like 20,
Yeah,
21,
yeah,
and first I could not imagine.
yeah,
But it definitely didn't afford them self-care and
yeah,
things like that because honestly they did what you're supposed to do.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
now there's this other person that you focus on. And so we have the privilege to take that time for ourselves, and
yeah,
we definitely shouldn't take for granted.
yeah, yeah. Also, I'm like, I remember you said you're the oldest. How many siblings do you have?
That is a story. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have, I have definitely a blended family.
Okay.
So, like on my mom's side, it's me and a sister.
Mhm.
We're 11 years apart,
Mhm.
and then on my dad's side, it is a good amount of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would, because the reason why I asked that because I'm like, the oldest has a big role,
Yeah.
and I was curious about like, by you being the oldest sibling, how has that taught, like, what have you learned about love, or just like, what has that,
Ooh.
yeah, what have you learned about love by being the eldest sibling?
I'm like getting emotional
Okay.
from you asking me that. I actually just had just like a vulnerable conversation after a little bit of a blow up.
Yeah.
Like so I went on vacation with my family, my
Mm.
mom and my little sister, and then a bunch of just friends and things like that from back home.
Yeah.
But we all ended up having like a vulnerable kind of hard conversation. And so that you asking me that question, it kind of brings that up and really answers it for me. Is
Mm.
that love changes,
Mm.
and like we all evolve. Like the people, for lack of a better word, like administering love, right?
Yeah.
People change, we
Yeah.
evolve.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're doing it correctly, you should.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's loving through those changes.
Yeah.
It's I don't even know if adjusting is the right word because I'm truly articulating this as we speak, but
Yeah.
just to have grace for those changes and to communicate how those things make you feel
Yeah.
um, under the umbrella of love. Like,
Yeah.
I still love you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you're different.
Yeah.
Me and my sister being, there being this gap in our ages, like,
Mhm.
we truly have two different moms.
Yeah.
I mean, she's still my mom too. So now I have this different mom too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, my mom has grown so much, and I'm so proud of her for that. But at the same time, I'm just like, you would never allow me to do that.
Yeah.
Or who is this person now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who is, super open and like having these talks and like going to therapy and and it's just like, I didn't have that person, or creating the space for my sister to have emotions and to talk. You know what I mean? When I was young, it was very much so, you're a child, stay in a child's place. I was, very much so good girl, like this is how you act. My sister doesn't have those type of tropes on her, and I think as eldest siblings, like you get the younger parent who didn't know 100% what they were doing, who might have held on a little tighter, you know what I mean? And so just accepting that, like knowing why my mother's different. Also letting go of just like old shit. You know what I mean? Like letting go of like maybe, something my mother said in the past, or how she acted in the past, or the ideals she used to hold in the past. Acknowledging like she doesn't hold those anymore. I don't have to hold those. Whatever label or whatever box I felt like I had to be in as a child, I don't need to be in that box anymore. So just like accepting those changes, giving, your loved ones grace, acknowledging how they've changed, how you've changed. So I low-key don't even remember your question.
No.
But
no, you answered it.
But like,
you
okay.
answered it. Yeah, no, you answered it.
Because it put me right back into that, like, we were on the balcony having this hard conversation. And it was just like, I'm so grateful for those changes.
Yeah.
Do I wish they were there when I was younger? Of course.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you don't get that without, or you don't get this without that,
Yeah.
the past. So,
yeah. I really appreciate you for sharing that. Shout out to Hard Conversations. Because I really feel like that is actually what brings us closer.
100%. Yeah.
Like, avoiding those hard conversations is actually what creates distance between any relationship.
Yeah.
And so the more we're able to lean into the hard conversations, the more we get a chance to just be closer. And it's so vulnerable. Because it's like,
so vulnerable.
I don't know how you're going to respond. It's so hard. It's like, I don't know how you're going to respond. I don't know how you're going to receive it. And like, in some ways, it can feel like it's going to be a make or break. Like, depending on how, like, I think for me, when I'm going into hard conversations, I'm like, which I think I've become more comfortable with for sure. But with newer people, or not even newer people, but I'm just having harder conversations with you. We haven't done this before. I'm like, I don't know how this can go, but like, this can feel like if it goes wrong, this might really rupture our relationship. And like the anxiety, the fear of that can sometimes be enough to not even do it. And to, so that's why I say like, it's such a big deal to lean into that and push through that and say like, I'm going to do this because like, I see the possibility of what can happen and also acknowledging like that possibility is the goodness. And not only thinking about the bad, but also thinking about like, what's the positive side of like the positive possibilities of what can happen by us having these hard conversations, So I love that.
It's so necessary. I think for me, another thing that equates to love is communication.
Absolutely.
Because if I truly care about that situation, I care about our relationship, I have to communicate. I have, like, that's something for me. I don't know if you're super into astrology, but I just, as a Gemini, like, ruled by Mercury, communication is a thing. I
know so many Geminis. I'm just like,
there's so many Gemini haters out there. Okay, like they love to hate us, but they do. But it's just like communication. It's such an expression of love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To really have those conversations. But the hard ones, really, it's where you grow.
Yeah.
It is. Like, you grow closer.
Yeah.
And seriously, my mom and sister, I've never felt closer.
That's so beautiful.
So.
I'm really happy that y'all had that conversation.
Me too.
So I love that. I think this is a great opportunity for us to move on to the next segment, which is dropping gems. There was you've been dropping gems, by the way. I'm just like this has already been happening, but so pretty much I have this lovely bowl here, and there's like different types of love. So there's like friendship love, self love, romantic love, spiritual love, all types of love, right? And so pretty much I'm going to pick something out of this bowl. I don't know which one's going to be. Don't know. Surprise, surprise. And then we get to both share what's our favorite gem about that particular love.
Yeah.
And why or how do we learn it? Okay. How do we learn that gem?
Can I pick it?
Absolutely. Hell yeah.
Okay.
All right. So while you're doing this, so there's another jingle. I love me some jingles, okay? All right.
Okay.
So this one is... we're dropping gems, dropping gems. We're dropping gems, dropping gems. Hey, we're dropping gems, dropping gems. Hey, we're dropping gems. All right.
Gems, baby.
Yay, okay. Gems, baby.
That was actually hot.
Right?
Hey. All right. So spiritual love.
Ooh, this is really good. I love this, actually. I really love this. I love this.
And so what exactly is the question?
So what is your favorite gem about spiritual love? What's your favorite gem about spiritual love? And why or how did you learn that lesson?
Spiritual love.
Yeah.
And by spiritual love, what is it that you mean exactly?
So spiritual love can be related to like higher power. If that's like your relationship, It could be the practice of spiritual connection, in the sense like, I was thinking about like spiritual practices that connect to like a higher power. I think that's because I was like, is it more than? I was like, I think the biggest piece to it is like a connection to like a higher power greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And in the ways in which and how. Yeah, I'll stop there actually.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's so great. I'm so glad I picked that. A gem for me is that you're never alone. Like, I'm never alone. Even in those moments where I've experienced depression or anxiety, I'm never alone. And there is something so much bigger than me. Yeah. Just orchestrating everything. Like, those things are not on my shoulders. Yeah. And so it gives me so much relief to just realize, even in the midst of my shadow self or in the midst of these, negative kind of isolating thoughts or feelings, that I'm never alone. Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Because you're right. You're right. We aren't alone on this journey. How did you learn that lesson?
So I grew up for the most part in church, in a Baptist church. And I learned that very young. And I think sometimes I've forgotten. Or I've been so much in my head that it didn't cross my mind, but it is something that I return to like frequently, even when, I'm in those spaces or when I'm journaling. I just know for me that God is always with me and that it is not a conditional love. Yeah. There's not something I need to do to be loved by him. There's not something that, I need to give in order to receive that. Yeah. And that piece itself came with time too. Cause like I was saying, kind of this notion of being, that good girl or, certain things that you are supposed to do. So really doing away with those type of notions and just knowing that fully I'm loved, as I am. Yeah. That I think that came with just like me growing and things like that. But the notion of like not being alone came to me as a young child, like preteen kind of thing. And so it just gets more and more important. I think in a busy place like New York, you're surrounded by hundreds of people
Yeah.
all the time. But it's so easy to feel alone.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get in your own head or to harp on what you don't have. And so a notion like that just really keeps me.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like you said something you said a few things, but I think when people here in New York, they're like, so many people, but I'm like, because of so many people, it actually can feel like it can feel very isolated in ways, you know, because there's so much happening, you know what I mean? And so I love that, just like how knowing God and like knowing that like we are not alone is such a it's such a powerful thing, because I do, like, I definitely have experience of just like feeling lonely here. You know, it's like, it's a big city. It's a big city, and you know, of course, I'm thankful for like friendships and community and all of that. But you know, in those moments where it's just me, you know, knowing that God is also with me as well is something that I'm like, it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
You know, especially in those moments where like the moments where it feels a little tough, where things are just like not things don't feel as positive. You know, where there's the doubts, there's the fears, and like, you know, of course you have your friends you can call, but knowing that God is there to be someone to listen to you, but also offer that like piece of like, I got you, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means.
But I got you. You know.
Yeah. Whatever, you know, higher power, or maybe it's the universe.
Yeah.
But just knowing that somebody has your back, or no matter the outcome of whatever situation, you know, that you'll still have this support.
Yeah.
You know, that things are being worked out for your good. It's like all of that is very much so like reassuring. And it keeps you. So.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think I thinking about my gym. I'm like, that you are not alone is so good. I'm like, do I have anything to add to that? I was like, I don't know. I feel like that really captures it, because even just thinking about this week, you know, I'm like, so much has happened, and you know, it was so interesting because I feel like it's been a minute since I've been to church, and I like being in the presence, being in the community. I was like, I guess my gym is like, it is important to have spiritual practices, and be in community in a spiritual way. I think about how, you know, like the church was like, don't forget about God. You know, like everyone has their different beliefs, right? It's like, don't forget about the church. And, you know, something I was like, you know, as I was reflecting on the sermon, I was like, the church has created, like what the church has allowed for my mom and my dad to experience, and like their growth is, I've benefited from that. You know, like their ability to minister in the ways in which they are ministering has allowed for me has brought them closer to God. And by them being closer to God, now they get to express and allow for God to move through them with more ease. And so thinking about like, you know, when we talk about love, being able to be connected to a spiritual presence, a spiritual being, something higher than yourself, a higher being, allows for love to move through you more. And I think that's why it is so important to have like the spiritual practices.
Absolutely.
And be in community in a spiritual way. So whether it is nature, whether it's, you know, a location, a space, like a physical space, find those spaces where you can be in community with others, because life be lifing. And, you know, when we're talking about love, spiritual, like the spiritual being the spiritual life, I think a core value, the foundation of anything spiritual is love.
Period.
So that is my gem.
That was a great gem.
Yeah,
It really is.
Yeah,
I mean, and if you believe in God, God is love.
yeah,
You know, and I think there's a lot of people out there who focus on religion a
Yeah.
lot. And it's so much more about a relationship
yeah,
and like the whole of it. And really, just at the end of the day, it is just a reflection of love,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And so that would make sense that when you have this spiritual practice, that love would be able to flow through you so much easier.
yeah. And you know, something that came to my mind as we were talking was like, you know, how we were talking about like how relationships, like we experienced a version of something that was like, this could have been better, but like now I see it and it's a lot better. And I think about that even with like spiritual like spaces, like for example the church, right? Where it's like we might have experienced a particular church when we were early, like an earlier age, and it's just like it might be a little different now, you know. And we get to choose and find those spaces, whatever it is, right? Like it looks very different depending on like your beliefs, but just finding those spaces and giving it another chance,
Yeah.
you know, because it's like I experienced it back then this way, but who's to say that it won't be different? Or there's a better or another place, right? Because we, you know, back then, you know, I think about me, I'm like, I was a child. So like I went where my parents went. But now we have the choice to like figure out like where we want to go that aligns with us.
Sure.
And we just keep finding, but keep trying to find that community. Like,
Yeah.
don't feel like it's impossible to find it.
For sure.
Because it's like, it's worth it. So I'm really happy that this was the gym that really the topic, because I'm like I felt like this something was telling me it was going to be something related to spiritual this go around. So this is really dope. All right, cool. Well, we have one more question before we close out.
Wow.
You know, I know, right? It's been going through, right? It's been moving. So Bell Hooks, she talks about just like the invitation for us to return back to love. And so my question to you is like, how can people return back to love? I typically, I was like in 2024, but I'm like, no, we ain't gonna do it 2024. We're gonna do how can people return back to love, just in general.
Just in general. How can people return back to love? I really am just gonna repeat what I said. It just starts in you.
Yeah.
I think that in so many ways we think of love and we think of this like outward expression.
Yeah.
When it is so important for you to love yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that it'll flow into the other things that you're doing, or it'll just naturally, you know, light you from within.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it'll pour out to other things or other people.
Yeah.
So I think that return, I think it's sitting with yourself and figuring out what love means to you. And I think that's something else that Bell Hooks talks about in terms of just like there not being really this overarching definition for love, and that's how a lot of our wires get crossed. And you know, I love you means nothing and everything all at once. You know what I mean? And so I think how you get back to love is defining it for yourself, practicing it within yourself, and giving yourself and others grace.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You saying like something that stood out was like defining love. So I think that everyone has very different definitions of different things, and we just be like, this is what this means to me, and but it goes back to that communication piece, right? About like this, like, what does this mean to you?
Yeah.
And what does this mean to me? And how do we want to move forward together? You know, in all relationships, right? Like, but as you mentioned, we first can take time to like figure out what it means for us first.
Yeah.
You know, before we bring anyone into it, it's just like, let me just check in with myself and what I need.
For sure.
You know?
Like a little free game from my therapist.
Yeah.
It was like, what'd she say? She was saying, go ahead and write down like what it is to love Aaliyah. So if there was like an ingredients list, like a how to, right? Like write down what that looks like. How would somebody show up that equates to love for you? And like knowing what it takes to love you, I think it's a better way to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it gives you an idea of what you're looking for in someone else and how someone else, you know, shows up. You're like, oh, actually, that's on my list. Like, oh, you know? So I think getting clear for yourself, because a lot of us, I want to say all of us, but I think everybody's looking for somebody, you know, to, you know, love them, to fully see them. But so many of us are out there winging it and like don't even know what that would look like for ourselves. And then you end up accepting something that maybe doesn't 100% look like what would truly feed you. You know, so just a little free therapist game.
I love that. Free game, free game.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now I'm sitting with that because I'm like, it is, it's like taking time to check in with self. And by doing that, it creates space for people to show up for you as well. Because you're right. Like, we are just like winging the hell out of it. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm like, oh, this feels good. Or,
you know? Yeah. And it's like, you know, even when I think about like the journey, it's like, you also, you know, if you, depending on like your type of relationship style, you know, there's different forms, but whether it's one person or multiple people, in a romantic sense, particular, right, where it's like being able to let folks know what you need and what you want, and inviting them into to show up, you know. So I definitely like, I agree about just like take a moment to just like, what does it mean to love me? What do I need? So that when I'm in like talking to these different people out here, it's like, this is what I need. What do you need? And like, what can we do? Like, you know, what do you have capacity for? And then we get to choose if that is enough or not. You know? And like you also mentioned, I think, which is also something I wanted to just like share, is like, the platonic relationships are such a great space to experience love and like cultivate love in a way where we don't have to wait for that romantic love to experience like love. And I think that to me is like that is what I'm thankful for, because I feel like a lot of like my platonic relationships have actually allowed for me to become a better lover. And so whenever it does happen, you know, it's like, thank my friends, okay? All right? Thank my friends, you know?
No.
You know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of those collective experiences like add to, you know, how you end up showing up. And I'm super grateful for that too. I think in the past when I was younger, it was so like, boys are boys and girls are girls. Like it was such a separate thing, but we all like want the same thing and like want to be seen and, you know, showing up for and stuff like that. And so I love that. I love that for you.
Thank
Shout
you.
out to your future partner.
Hey.
You're welcome.
Right. But no, yo, I really appreciate you joining the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Like this was really, really, really dope. Like I feel really full, and
I love it.
Like I feel like the intentions that we put forth in the space, like I feel like we were able to lean into that. And I also feel like I got a chance to learn more about you. So like that's also like always a joy. So you know, like thank you so much, and
thank you.
Thank you to the homies for tuning in to another episode of the Palo Santo and Thoughts podcast. Again, I'm Carter, and I'm joined by the homie Aaliyah. And do you want to share your socials?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram, kind of on TikTok, not really. But it's Lay Fowler. That's it.
Yeah, there it is. And I am Palo Santo and Thoughts on TikTok and Instagram.
Right.
So I appreciate you all for tuning in to another episode. And yeah, until next time, peace.